Howdy and welcome back to the workshop. In today's episode, we're making a very special project for a friend of mine. That friend is Miss Alicia Newton. She is the queen of Blade Show. She runs all of Blade Show. She runs Blade Show Atlanta, the big one, Blade Show West, and Blade Show Texas, and she does all kinds of other amazing things. But she's a wonderful friend of mine, and right now, the way that she opens up the largest knife shows in the world is by just yelling that it's open, and that's not okay. We're gonna do something about that by making her a big old musical triangle that she can go like that and let everyone know that the show has officially started. So what we're gonna do is fire up the forge and stack up a big old billet of Damascus to build this musical instrument from. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what a triangle is, we'll break it down. Tri means three in Latin or something. Angle means like this. And so that means that there's three of them like that. Of course, if it were to be all connected, it would not work musically because you wouldn't have the science. And so you need to build a triangle that doesn't quite connect. So it'll be something like that, and then, well, actually, it'll be something like that end open, and we'll have a little leather hanging thing to be able to hang on to it up above. And that way you can bounce a baton or some sort of stick sort of thing around in here. The plan is to make it about this big, roughly 1 foot on each side. So we're gonna need to make 36 inches of round Damascus. Now, in order to make this interesting, I think we're gonna do some twisting. I think that's gonna be the best way to keep a pattern that's gonna be this stretched out, have a nice visual appearance. It's also not a terribly challenging pattern to make into round bar. It looks good all the way around, and so that's what we're gonna shoot for. We're gonna start off by stacking up a big old billet and forge welding it underneath the power hammer. First things first is cutting up all of the pieces of steel to 7 inches long. From there, I take them to the belt grinder and get them all cleaned off from any surface rust so that I have a nice clean welding surface. After that, I MIG weld up my corners and my edges. I do this to keep all the steel in place so that I can move it around while it's hot without the pieces falling apart. I'm gonna take the first heat on my 1924 Baudry mechanical power hammer. But I'm out of the oil that I use to oil up the machine, and so I mix up a little bit of 30 weight non-detergent oil along with some chainsaw bar oil. This is a good combination of stickiness so that it sticks to some of the areas where the oil doesn't pool, but it's also thin enough that it's not gonna collect too much dust and be too sticky. I don't want to smash the MIG welds in on the side of the billet, and so I grind off the majority of the weld, just enough to keep it from those layers expanding and letting oxygen in between them. The first heat is underneath the power hammer. It's a quick welding heat, getting full contact on the width of my 1924 Baudry dies. This means that the whole billet is gonna be completely welded. And then I throw it back in to let it come back up to a nice high heat, and I let it soak for a minute. That gives the opportunity for the grain of the steel. It used to be separate pieces, now it's one solid piece. It allows that grain to grow across the boundaries and helps me to have a much stronger weld in the long run. We're gonna draw it out till it's about 1.5 inches wide and about 1/2 inch thick. We'll then clean it up and restack it. Into the grinding room we go. an interesting thing about the shape of a triangle is the reason why it works so well for music, I think, is because it has just one of the reasons why it's so good. It would be better though if it rather than if it would was a Squarespace. And that's neat because today's sponsor just so happens to be Squarespace. Squarespace is how I sell an awful lot of my work. Now, I don't sell all of my work through Squarespace. I love to go to knife shows. I'm a very social person, and I have a great time getting to meet face-to-face with customers, getting to hang out with my other bladesmith friends, to buy materials, see the cool work that people are doing. I think all of that is fantastic. But it's not always possible to be at knife shows. It used to be that about 20 years ago, if you wanted to sell knives, you had to go to knife shows to sell knives. That's kind of it. That, maybe some local stores, maybe there's a couple of purveyors, but pretty much everyone sold knives, at least high-end custom knives, through knife shows. Now that's not the case. Nowadays, we can use the internet in order to be able to do that. Now there's social media, that's one way to do it, but really the best, most professional way to do it is through your own website. Squarespace makes that incredibly easy and accessible with their pre-laid out website designs, their ability to take different forms of payment like PayPal or credit cards, stuff like that, as well as the ability to easily add products and change everything about your site. So you can have galleries of your work like I have on my site. You can list products for sale. You can have exclusive members-only content areas. You can manage your inventory and have point-of-sale systems so that even while you're at a knife show, you can manage your inventory back home. It makes all of that incredibly easy and accessible for just about anyone to do. You don't have to be a website designer in order to have a beautiful website. So if you guys are interested in checking out Squarespace and building yourself a beautiful website, please go to squarespace.com/Will Stelter and use code Will Stelter at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a website domain. With that, let's keep on making the only two-angled triangle maybe in the world. That's not true. I think all musical triangles like this, but it's still goofy. All right, well, here we have our bar of 65 layers of 1080 and 15N20 high carbon steel. It's been twisted, it's been octagonalized, it's been brought down to 700,000th of an inch octagon bar, and now we're going to slap it in the lathe to get it cleaned up. Now I'm a little bit worried about this. This is a fairly thin bar to be turning for such a long space, so I expect to get some chatter in the center of our bar. I'm going to be taking fairly light cuts. First we're going to face off both sides, then we'll center drill the end, and then we'll put this live center here on the far side and the other end in the chuck, and get to turning. What the hell? The lathe just quit working. Motor's still spinning, but something is not right. All right, so there we go. Oh, that is juicy. What do we got here? It's a bronze wear piece right there. Would you re-engage it? And undo it again. And redo it. Here's the thing, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, so if that's engaging properly, then it's something in the gears themselves. But we have a bit of a time crunch on this project. I need to have it done by tomorrow, because that's when I'm leaving for Blade Show. At least we've got a basis for where we need to be. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, like roundness-wise. That doesn't really matter. I just figured this would be the fastest way to get it cleaned up. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to come back and check on the lathe after this is done. Let's go into the grinding room, get this thing cleaned up. I left it octagonal because my initial plan was to grind it, and having those flat surfaces allows me to have a reference for how even each side is, and then as I round it down, I can go from octagonal to whatever a 16-sided shape is, and then go fully round from there. Let's head on over into the grinding room, and we'll start off on a 36 grit belt, and then go to a 60, and then a 120, and then we'll probably finish it off Either at a, well, we'll probably finish it off at a 400. So in order to be able to etch this thing, we're gonna have a couple of issues. For one thing, I have absolutely no way to heat treat this. It's gonna be such a huge shape. I don't have anything even close enough to have the right volume of oil for it. I could maybe get it hot in my kiln or something. I don't really think so, but either way, to etch it, I'm gonna do a really deep etch and then kind of polish it. So it won't be super high contrast in kind of what we're used to on knives and stuff like that. I'm gonna mix up a fairly aggressive mix in here, probably about 1 to 4 or so of water to acid, ferric chloride, not actually acid. And I'm going to be able to etch part of it, and then I'll have to flip it and etch the other part. I'm gonna do that right now so I can see where the good part of the pattern starts. Then we'll move on to trimming it, sanding it, bending it, all that good stuff. So this piece looks unbelievably good. The steel looks great. It's a perfect layer density for what we're doing with it. It looks very nice as it is right now. And I've got it marked out right now. The piece is just a touch over 27 inches long. It's really right at 27. And I marked it at 18.5 inches and at 8.5 inches. That means that there is 10 inches in between and 8.5 inches on either side. Now the reason for that, why I didn't split it up into 3 sections of 9, is because I need to leave a little open end on it. And so I want my middle section to be a touch longer than the other 2 pieces. You don't want it touching because then it doesn't music properly, and we want it to music very well. Uh-oh. All right, there's a slight flat spot on here from where I whacked it on the anvil. I whacked the end of it, but this hit the anvil and flattened it off. So we're just gonna hand file this out. I will probably blend it with a belt here in a minute. I just wanna make sure it's not too bad. Well, that's etching. Let's go ahead and forge ourselves up a little bronze ringing stick. Got some 954 aluminum bronze here. It might not quite be thick enough though. I cracked it. I've never cracked this stuff before. Well, we went down to my friend Hyle's place, and he cut up a nice strip of leather, dyed it, wetted it, got it all ready, and tied it in a nice knot. And so it not only holds the triangle quite well without dampening the sound, but it looks nice, and it gives a little leash for the baton so you don't lose it while you're on your adventures. Just prepare your ears, because it's got a nice sound, but it's also very loud. Oh my God.
Wow. That is wild.
It's very loud, which is good because it's meant to get the attention of a lot of people to let them know that the knife show has started. Overall, this was a very fun project, apart from breaking my lathe, but it's always fun to get to forge on some bronze. It was weird making such a long bar of Damascus. That was just kind of a funky experience and trying to get it all clean and smooth and whatnot. You'll notice that the finish that it has on it is not a high contrast finish, like I said before. That contrast comes, I believe, from the way that the oxide forms on martensite, which is the hardened crystalline grain structure, and this is perlite, I believe, the structure that this is at, and so it's not dark, but it still looks nice. You can still totally see that it's Damascus. It's just not bright black and white. I'm very tickled. I hope that Alicia likes it. I will let you guys know how it goes at the knife show when she opens it up with the triangle. So huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you to our patrons for patronizing us. And hopefully I will see some of you guys at Blade Show West in Salt Lake City this weekend. Alrighty, bye-bye.